in Australian legal history. It's against the medical giant Johnson & Johnson. It's the company's third class action in Australia in as many years. It's being fought on behalf of a group of women who've suffered devastating side effects from what was supposed to be a simple medical procedure to treat prolapse after childbirth. It raises major questions about Australia's system of medical approvals because the products concerned were introduced without any pre-market testing. Matt Wordsworth reports.
I found this one of us when we first met.
When Julie Davis was younger, she had a brilliant plan. Travel the world, meet the man of her dreams, and settle down to have a family.
We look all happy and cheery and, yeah.
And she succeeded, but along the way endured a traumatic birth and some terrible consequences.
I'd had a very bad forceps delivery with my first child, who's now 10, and I had to wait until all my children were born and to fix a very significant bladder prolapse.
It's a common problem, but a number of companies offered a relatively new product to Australia, transvaginal mesh. It's stitched in near the top of the vagina to help the pelvic floor muscles support the internal organs, much like a sling.
The surgery itself was way more traumatic and devastating than I had imagined. I was in pain, a lot of pain and discomfort down below, and I also had this feeling of, I don't know, this lack of energy and like my body was fighting something all the time.
It obviously made our intimate side of our relationship pretty much non-existent for a long time, and I felt that I went into the survival mode of actually just trying to hold everything together.
I can see where Mia gets her breakfast still from, my darling.
While her husband shouldered the load of earning an income and running the household, Julie, still in her 40s, was forced to use a mobility scooter. Walking was painful, the family business suffered, and the emotional toll was almost too much.
And I did get to the point where I just actually was chronically depressed, and I had to go to see a GP and go on antidepressants. And there was one point I was driving my car and I was just thinking, geez, it'd be easy just to turn the wheel at Curl Headland and just go off, because I felt that desperate.
She sought out a new surgeon, urogynecologist Richard Reed. He says the mesh was acting like a cheese grater in her body and had literally rubbed a hole in the wall of her vagina.
When the mesh is put underneath the bladder, the bladder moves back and forth as it fills, and it moves back and forth during intercourse. And because mesh scar is fundamentally quite fibrous, and bladder is very soft, we call this compliance mismatch, which means the same as rubbing a piece of cheese over a metal grater.
Research published last May in the New England Journal of Medicine found mesh kits had higher short-term rates of successful treatment, but also higher rates of surgical complications and post-operative adverse events. 2 months later, in July 2011, the Food and Drug Administration in the United States issued a formal warning, saying they were a greater risk with no evidence of greater clinical benefit. Johnson & Johnson removed its product from sale earlier this year, and class actions are underway in America, Canada, and today the first class action was launched in Australia.
This prolapse mesh class action that we've commenced in the federal court, we believe has the potential to be the biggest product class action that Australia has ever seen.
Rebecca Jankowskis is representing Julie Davis as the lead plaintiff in the class action. She estimates as many as 20,000 Australian women may have had transvaginal mesh implanted, and that's despite the product having undergone no clinical trials. Certain classes of medical devices may be sold without adequate testing if they're going to be used in a similar way to existing products. And mesh kits had already been very successful in treating urinary incontinence, but that's an area where there isn't the same friction from internal organs.
So the system was set up and the device companies have used the system. I think that with the wisdom of hindsight, probably it would have been more prudent for them to have done more testing before that it was released.
It's not the first legal trouble for Johnson & Johnson in Australia. Last year, a class action was launched over its DePuy hip replacement device, which left hundreds of patients poisoned and seriously disabled. In 2010, it faced similar legal proceedings over its knee replacement products. But just like mesh kits, neither product had undergone pre-market clinical trials.
Given that this is now the third product class action that Johnson & Johnson has faced in as many years, it should raise some very serious concerns about their product safety standards.
The company has issued a statement saying,
"The decision to discontinue these products was based on their commercial viability in light of changing market dynamics and is not related to safety or efficacy. This is not a product recall, and based on this notification, it is not necessary for women who have received one of these products to take any action."
some are angry at the system's regulator, the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Senator Nick Xenophon, who was part of a parliamentary inquiry into the hip devices, is concerned problems like this are still happening.
Well, this is another instance of regulatory failure. The TGA is meant to be a watchdog of these devices, but it has failed comprehensively time and time again. This is the third serious instance in the last 12 months after problems with hip replacements, problems with breast implants, and now this indicates that there are some serious systemic problems with the TGA.
And while the FDA issued its warning to consumers last year, there has been no such move from the TGA. In a statement, it explained that it held a detailed review in 2010 and found the complication rate was low and depended on the skill of the surgeon, but it would continue to monitor the situation. Julie Davis has now had her mesh surgically removed.
Been a tough road, but
I hope that we're over the hill now, and I hope that we can actually start rebuilding our lives again, and in the way that the way we're planned.
That word's worth reporting. History was made